Once upon a time, there was a team called the A's. They played baseball in Oakland since '68. There were doubles and strikeouts and walk-offs with pie. There was music and drums, fireworks in the sky. The fans celebrated with every home run, a team and a city, together as one. Goodnight, Oakland. Goodnight, A's. Goodnight, baseball. Goodnight, fan base. Goodnight, Catfish, Eck, and Reggie. Goodnight, Raleigh, Stu, and Ricky. Goodnight, Gold. Goodnight, Green. Goodnight, Coco's Barney Lean. Goodnight, Blue Moon. Goodnight, Big Three. Goodnight, 20-game winning spree. Goodnight, Vida. Goodnight, Hardin. Goodnight, Billy, Bean, and Martin. Goodnight, players we didn't want to leave. Goodnight to chanting, I believe. Goodnight, Campy. Goodnight, Bando. Goodnight, trading stars for randos. Goodnight, Stomper. Goodnight, Hall of Famers. Goodnight, first-time fans. Goodnight, every gamers. Goodnight, weekend pregame tailgate. Goodnight, no Bart when games run late. Goodnight, Dick. Goodnight, Roy. Goodnight, Bill. Goodnight, Ray. Goodnight, perfect game on Mother's Day. Goodnight, MC Hammer. Goodnight, Tom Hanks. Goodnight, underdogs who rose through the ranks. Goodnight, cheap seat. Goodnight, three-peat. Goodnight, bashes. Goodnight, stashes. Goodnight, stolen bases. Goodnight, dot races. Goodnight, big swings. Goodnight, 4 rings. Goodnight, bleacher fans with creative new cheers. Goodnight, loyal staff with iconic careers. Goodnight, outfield drum. Goodnight, Coliseum. Goodnight, bright white cleats and pants. Goodnight, let's go Oakland chants. Goodnight, homers. Goodnight, double plays. Goodnight, team and city where our heart stays. Goodnight, forever, Oakland A's.